Hi, I'm Keith Williams, the 2003 Jeopardy College champion. In our first 3 installments, I showed you that wagering isn't as hard as it seems. But now we're going to look at some more complex scenarios. Join me for part 4 of how to calculate the final wager. Now, having a third player adds an extra dimension to the wagering. And Jeopardy fans have found a whole slew of scenarios in which the leader should wager to tie. Now, I'm going to suggest that you memorize 2 of them, and I'll get into why later. But using my methods, you can find out the proper wagers no matter what. Let's look at one example.
We have Jeff in the lead with 6,400, Bob in second with 5,900, and Cathy in third with 3,200. We'll start with first and second, Jeff and Bob. Jeff wants to cover an all-in wager by Bob. If Bob doubles up, he'll have 11,800. To cover this, Jeff will have to wager at least 5,400. Bob looks at what Jeff will have if he's wrong. If Jeff answers incorrectly, he'll have at most 1,000. Therefore, Bob can wager up to 4,900. For rule number 3, we look at the difference between the 2 scores, and see if either player can make a safe wager. The difference is 500. Bob can safely wager 500 to cover a 0 wager by Jeff. Now we turn to second and third, Bob and Cathy. If Cathy doubles up, she'll have 6,400. To match this total, Bob will need to wager at least 500. Now we look at what happens if Bob gets it wrong. In that case, he would have 5,400. Cathy will therefore need to wager at least 2,200 to match this. The difference between Bob's and Cathy's scores is 2,700. Bob can restrict his maximum wager to this amount. Finally, for first and third, Jeff and Cathy. We know that Jeff needs to wager at least 5,400 to cover Bob. He'll have no more than 1,000 if he does that. To stay at or above this total, Cathy can wager no more than 2,200. So we're done. Bob should wager between 500 and 2,700. Cathy between 2,200 and 2,200. Wait a minute, did you catch that? That means Cathy has to wager this amount. And now we turn to rule number 4. So it doesn't really matter who we look at first. Let's pick Jeff. If Cathy gets it right, she'll have 5,400. To stay above this total, Jeff can wager no more than 1,000. But he already needs to wager at least 5,400, so we'll disregard this. But what if Cathy's wrong? She'll have 1,000. Which is already Jeff's total if he wagers properly. That means he can wager no more than 5,400, meaning he has to wager 5,400. Now we do the same thing for Bob. If Cathy gets it right, she'll have 5,400. To stay above this, Bob can wager no more than 500. But see, he already has to wager at least that amount. Therefore, he has to wager 500. So we've calculated that Bob has to wager 500, Cathy has to wager 2,200, and Jeff has to wager 5,400. But remember, corollary number 4 says there might be some other wagers available. If Bob wagers 500, Jeff could wager 0, and Cathy could wager everything. And if Jeff wagers 5,400, Bob could wager everything. So what does each of them do? Well, it depends on their knowledge of the category and what they think each other player will do. But usually, the first wager is the safest.
So this is not one of those situations I'm going to recommend you memorize, but here it is anyway. First has twice as much as third, and second score is closer to first than to third. Now let's look at the 2 that I'm going to suggest you do memorize.